Welcome back to the action here in the Algarve. You're joining us for the European Beach Ultimate Championships 2019. Myself, Hannah Pendlebury, joined on the stream by Benji Rees and our ever-present hero, Brian the Statsman, in his hat, his trackies, and very thick coat. It is breezy and chilly this morning. Conditions overcast as we get the latter stages of women's pool play underway. The Russians versus the Swiss. Both teams we've seen before here on this live stream, Benji. How have things been panning out?
It's a little bit of a mixed bag for both teams here. The Swiss haven't had quite their own way of things. Heavy losses at the start of the tournament to Denmark 13-4. They lost to the Latvians 10-6. They lost to GB and sudden death 9-8, but they have began to improve, got a bit more chemistry as the weeks progressed. They got their first win of the tournament, played nicely in a win over Courier Island 9-7. The Russians, big wins over Courier Island and GB, but two sudden death losses, both 9-8 to the Spanish and to the Latvians.
Yes, and the Latvians playing behind us. We saw them on the stream earlier on this week. Didn't seem to get their hands around discs as well as they'd hoped. An opportunity deep, but there's going to be a pick call well before that throw. Not sure if the players will decide it impacted, but certainly a very early pick for the Swiss.
The nature of that throw leads me to believe it's one of those kind of high stalled bailout throws. So depending on how early the pick occurred, they may decide that there was an effect here. Now there's a bit of history between these two teams, Hannah. The last time we ran this tournament out in 2013, the Russian women beat the Swiss women in the final.
They certainly did, Benji, back in Calafell. That was a great tournament. There was actually a festival on at the time for the locals, so a great party atmosphere for that one. And the same true here for Portimao. Not that there's a local festival on, but just great scenes. Beach Ultimate bringing together such spirited players. As we see the Russians now, though an errant pass, but it will be redeemed by the running form. And Keznia Shekina is going to centre in. Big pass coming out the hand of Anastasia Kochenova. Sails over the intended target.
A little bit rusty start there from the Russians. The first overthrow was actually a pretty smart heads-up play from Shekina, making sure that she could get underneath it, but they couldn't capitalise.
Oh, and there we see a redemption from the Swiss too. The number 39, Smila Daina. Nice swinging across the field. Big put. Going to go up. Can Daina get underneath it? She's going to have to bib, but just enough from the Russian defender to tip it out of contention.
The only possible way she would have got that if she played for the tip initially and continued going on, but it's hard to ask a player to do that. You never know which way the disc is going to go if it does get defended. So doing the right thing, try to attack the disc, but obviously on this occasion just didn't have the position for it.
So a great play from what looks to be the number 10, Silchanok. But you're right, Benji, it's so hard to, once you've paused because you think it's all over, to try and get yourself moving again on the sand. Generating speed is ever so tricky as we see the Russians put up a big shot of their own. That's going to sit and hang all the space in the world for the intended target, the number 21. Now a nice bit of work there. Good side-to-side cuts. Shekina rolls it in for the first score on the board. Russia 1, Switzerland nothing.
Beauty of a put there, just gave Kochenova plenty of time to get underneath it. I thought she was going to be able to milk it into the end zone, but she saw actually this is going to hang a little bit, and with the defender closing, I've got to take it early. It's much more important that we retain possession and cape the disc than we try something fancy, try and just squeeze it into the end zone if it's maybe not quite there for it, and then isolated, shaking her into the end zone, and a little backhand for the score.
Yeah, you see Kochenova with hands in the air, and then just nice, patient, side-to-side, good faking to throw the mark off, give herself a nice, easy pass. Lehmann on the floor.
Yeah, you see the problem with the defender, got the hips done and was focused entirely on the disc, couldn't see the receiver behind him, and that allowed her to worm free, and especially on the beach, you only need a little bit of space and it can be crucial.
Well, that's a lesson we saw in the previous game, the Danish men versus the Portuguese. Nice big pull from the Russians. That's going to give tricky field position. Swiss in their own end zone. Potential Callahan territory there, but a lovely shot from the seasoned hand of Asli Yaman. But that's again an errant pass for the Swiss. Pacifico tumbling into the sand, unable to make a hero bid to keep it alive.
The deep option was there, but something the Russians did well on their shot was it kept it relatively flat and gave it space to run to. That one, slightly too much edge on it, and it meant she had to change direction as she cut, and so difficult to do that on the sand.
So Russia now have it back. Opportunity. They took a break of score coming into the game. Can they make it two? That's a lovely big backhand for the 15, Vinogradova. Nice and patient. Sulimova is going to pop it up. That's a big target in the 15 shirt of Vinogradova, but too much with the wind gently behind the disc.
Yeah, the space was definitely there, but not quite the finesse on that throw that was needed. Put too much on it, and with the target that's open, you don't need to have quite that zip. You can just sit it out a little bit and let the receiver have a chance to make a play with the defender not really that close in coverage.
With such a small channel, pacey discs like that are liable to just fall away into the sand, as we see Yaman putting a disc deep. Can it be redeemed? Oh, so close. Defender calling it down as Hepa Aho took a big face full of sand there. Saw her scrunch her mouth and eyes up to try and keep it out, but good spirit there, turnover.
Yeah, my gut instinct was that she wasn't quite able to scoop it off the sand, but it was a fantastic effort nonetheless.
Yasalova puts it up nice and high. Mikhailova. Good swing back. Shekina. Yasalova. Vinogradova. Big target, but comes out the end zone. Russia looking a little bit static right now. Sulimova shaking her head at the upfield options. Strike coming. Well defended by the Swiss. And there we can see the around shot layout from Vinogradova. And second point on the board for the Russians.
Picture perfect play there. I'm a little surprised that they didn't try and look for that break earlier. They've shown a real ability to really get wide and get around that mark, and there were a couple of opportunities in that point where they had players in a bit of space on the break side, but weren't, I don't think, aggressive enough breaking the force. There we see defenders drawn out of position, watching that strike cut from Yasalova. It's a beautiful around backhand and full extension on that layout grab.
Yes, not the largest target we see come out of the Russian ultimate community in the form of Elena Vinogradova, but certainly a nice one to hit. You could see her actually putting her arm in the air before the dump pass was made, saying, I'm open and available, hit me on the break side. But a lovely little pop back and then swing around using the break side with lovely form.
This is a slightly different Russian team that we've seen in the past. A couple of the big names, the Pustovaya sisters and Dina Demansko as well, both all playing mixed. And so there's a couple of younger players in this team. Yasalova was one of the key cogs on that point, especially with that fantastic pull to start things off. She's a player that kind of really caught quite a lot of attention at the European Youth Ultimate Championships in Veenendaal a couple of years ago. It's good to see that she's able to step up to this big stage.
Well, as we see a disco arrive for the Swiss once more. Talking about the Russian ultimate scene, a very tight-knit community, and as you point out, Benji, great to see the youth development coming through and the big-name players moving away from the women's side, allowing the young talent to get that big game experience. Side stack from the Russians, trying to isolate players near side to the disc. Vinogradova back into Kochenova, who's going to rip it up big. Not quite in the end zone is Aramkova. There's a potential foul call. So we see Livia Staub in the sand on her knees. Perhaps a little collision there as players running through.
Very impressed by the speed that Yulia Akramova showed across the sand. Did well to get it again. We've seen it before. Maybe had the opportunity to try and milk it into the end zone, but much prefer to make sure she made that catch solidly with a defender just in the area, just in the line, don't want to leave anything up to chance, and I think maybe just a clashing of legs as the Russian player came through.
And so discussion ongoing on the field as we see, I believe that's Tizik from the Russians coming in to do some translation. So a signalling a contested foul, but obviously a stoppage of play, so this will come back. Let's have a look at that. I think maybe, yes, I think that was Elena Vinogradova who caught the leg of Livia Staub as she was cutting through to try and help her teammate. So disc back in the hands of Yulia Akramova. This coming in on 4. So Russians looking for their reset, but that's a lovely sharp turn. Rinses the defender, leaves for dust. Great play from Russia.
Again, the Russians hadn't been particularly keen at the start of the game, but that's the first time they've worked it all the way down the pitch without turning it over. You mentioned Elisa Tizik's presence aiding in that discussions. Obviously, when teams don't necessarily share a common language, it can be difficult. That's partly why the hand signals were introduced. But on the beach, we're completely self-refereed. There's no game advisors. Players are the referees, and every team appoints a spirit captain to help aid discussion and make sure that calls are being resolved quickly and fairly and keeping to time limits, and Elisa Tizik is the player doing that job for the Russians.
Yes, and without the presence of referees, it's good to have that role, and it's such an important one, as you say, Benji. But I'm surprised to not see the Swiss call a timeout. Coach Derek Gottlieb coming out from Colorado all the way to help out in the coaching capacity for the Swiss women's side. Look out for him. He's in a Patagonia hooded jersey. Other brands, of course, are available. It was a very fetching powder blue.
I do like a powder blue uniform.
Oh, and that's a lovely layout from Asli Yaman. Actually, no, sorry. Serbi Quelas. But again, puts up a big pass. We saw Quelas throw lots of those in the first live stream game for the Swiss team. Likes to sit them up and loft. Lots of hang time. Good bid coming in from Olga Romanova to take it away. So Romanova popping it up. Podolskaya to Tizik. Tumbles to the floor just to make sure. That's a great little bid. And a 4th point on the board for the Russians.
A little bit of a flourish there to end it from the Russians, but that time just devastating, quick break side movement. The Swiss just couldn't hold the force and they couldn't get in position. And if you can get, especially early on in the point, get the break, and you can get that easy continuation if you time those cuts early enough. And the Swiss had no chance of stopping it. And you mentioned you were a little surprised to see them not have called a timeout the point before. Coach Gottlieb has now kind of maybe seen the error of his way somewhat. Going to get a chance to reset Swiss heads here.
Perhaps he wanted to have another look at what the Russians were doing in order to make some crucial adjustments. That's lovely work there. Olga Podolskaya into Tizik. Nice to see Tizik taking off the long sleeve, getting involved, making her mark on this women's match.
You mentioned wearing the long sleeve. It's because obviously we're on the beach and you expect, you know, sun, sea, sand. Well, we've got 2 out of 3. I think that there was a wise philosopher, Mr. M. Loaf, who said that 2 out of 3 ain't bad. But it's still, actually, in a way, not having that baking sun down is not actually a terrible thing. It can be so draining, especially when you're playing in the heat of the middle of the day. Just running on sand's difficult enough as it is without potentially getting even more dehydrated and sunburned. So a little bit of moisture in the air. It's not enough to probably firm up the sand as they would like. No,
but turning our heads to over our right shoulders, Benji, it does look slightly ominous. Some rather nasty-looking clouds being blown in our direction by the breeze. Talking to the Russian mixed team ahead of their game on this stream, they were actually saying that they found it so difficult in Royan, which was absolutely sweltering on the fields of the World Beach action. So they're actually really pleased that they've had cooler conditions. This plays directly into the hands of the Russians, and Russia not really known for having that much wind, especially in Moscow where a lot of these players are based. It's nice to see them able to use take advantage of this lovely lack of breeze, really. The wind's very, very gentle. You can just see the flags in the back of the shots being caressed by the wind.
So Oliver just getting some instruction from her coaching about exactly where she needs to pull the disc from. Just trying to centre a little bit with that backhand blade, and actually she could have done with pushing more towards that far side as the disc lands out of the near one here, and you see the Swiss begin to pick it up and bring it in from the brick mark.
Yeah, we've talked about the Swiss coach, but as with all Russian teams, it seems there's a good coaching staff. We don't have names for you on our information, but they are present, all three of them. Disc going up for the Swiss, Lucy Pocha, and a lefty layout grab, and that's a great way to inspire confidence and get their first point on the board.
Maybe a little bit more dicey than the Swiss would have liked, but a fantastic play from Pocha in order to, as you mentioned, reduce the deficit, get on the board. Just caught Yasalova a little bit unsighted, and that was all it needed, just the smallest of windows to sneak that one in there.
The legal beagle from Geneva, Lucy Pocha, playing for Wizards at the World Club Championships in Cincinnati last year. Lots of experience, able to keep composure for this grab.
You can see what it means, the elation on her face. Doesn't matter that she's got a lot of sand in places there shouldn't be sand.
We had an excellent tidbit of information from, I believe, one of the Portuguese players yesterday in the mixed division, known for excavating the sand via his mouth and body parts. Lots of re-raking needed as players make beds. Nice upline play from the Russians here. Tasty indeed, and a disc out into the space. High release backhand. That is an absolute money shot from Anna Stukalina.
Some of the Russian teammates don't seem happy. Maybe that wasn't the play they had drawn up in mind, but it was a beautiful throw to Akramova, who had all sorts of time to reel that one in.
I'd love to get another look at that throw. Really lovely release point, sort of throwing a bit of a dicey one over the stack, I think. And
you mentioned how having a slightly calmer day wouldn't be bad. Wouldn't be a bad thing for the Russians, and we saw there just that throwing ability, just be able to sit that one out. And absolute peach for Akramova to see all the way towards that far sideline. Has to barely break stride. Doesn't even have to go full pelt either.
Actually, yeah, there's a fairly open channel, but Vinogradova not looking the happiest at that play. Perhaps there's a lot of discipline in the Russian teams, Benji. So maybe that's the thing, is she didn't toe the line, but we like the little bit of swagger here in this women's match. Big disc going up far sideline for the Swiss. Wee bit too far with 4 bodies under it.
Staub and Pocha were both in the area, but I'm not sure exactly who the intended target was. Maybe she saw both and thought, if I can put it up, one of them can make a play, but it was too far for either in the end.
Yeah, we've seen that though, the Swiss putting up some sort of more hospital-esque passes, just allowing players to crunch under it, but Russians pretty much able to match the likes of Staub and Pocha for height. So we see them get under way, charging down the field. Great energy from the Russian offense right now. Good timing upfield, nice inside channel, but just a little bit of concentration lacking from Sheikina, and the disc tumbles to the sand.
The throw not perfectly on the spot, and she wasn't able to bring it in.
So Schenk. Tumble just to make sure it stays in the hands. Oh, is that a point block there, Benji?
It is indeed. Huge active force by Sulchanok, not just getting in the way, but keeping those arms moving, making difficult. You see her move around, shuffle her feet to get into position, and just slap that disc to the ground.
Well, that is Blockus. And so Russia now, again, going towards this right-hand side end zone. Chance of their 5th break in this game. Score currently 5-1. Sulimova puts up a high one. Going to be needed to get almost towed for Sheikina.
Did that very casually at the end. Knew exactly where she was. Good field sense.
Shilkonok. Back in. Akramova. Oh, sorry, no, that's Kochenova. Oh, a disc reaching into space. Not too much trouble, but I think there'll be a discussion as to whether that was in or out. I think a fairly flat landing position. Sulimova not able to come up with the score.
Yeah, she's put the disc down, indicating that she's going to call herself out. It did look to me like she landed with that arm on the line first. At the very least, it's probably simultaneous. So good spirit by the Russians, agreeing that wasn't quite able to make the play there.
Poacher has the momentum, has separation downfield. Can the legs come under it? Oh, and that is a beautiful score from the Swiss. The number 39, Smila Daina, going to work. And what a launch from Lucy Poacher.
I think they seem to be carrying on, so maybe she just ground stripped herself as she landed. She did so well up until that point.
What? Oh, I thought that was the body language from the rest of the players looked like that was a score, but to be fair, great spirit then from Smila Daina. I got very excited. We'll have to unwind that one on our stats. But still, great play. Poacher just popping the disc out, much like the Russians are doing right now. Really great work of the lead passers. I'll say that. Commentator's curse. Oh, disc gone awry. Serena Schenk with the D. Full extension layout. Schenk up the line, chooses to squeeze it into that back corner, but no dice.
Schenk's a big player for this Swiss side. She's their stats leader coming into this game, had 6 goals and 6 assists to her name. She's a key player for this side, and she in her little player survey, she filled out that she wears short hair because apparently it helps her run faster. I wonder if the backwards cap is part of this aerodynamic ability as well.
Oh yes, trying to get those eddy current flowing, and a timeout call from the Russians. Just put their heads back on. It's becoming a bit of a long old point, this one.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me. This would be more turnovers than the Russians would have liked. And I think, to be fair, 1 turnover is more than the Russians would like. They're a team that is quite very well drilled and very disciplined. Their coach works them really hard, and it kind of forms a team bonding as well. It kind of gives them like a figure they can all kind of unite against in a way.
We see the Swiss coach there, as we already pointed out, Derek Gottlieb from Colorado. There was a interesting conversation with him earlier. He was talking about the fact that Gottlieb has coached Portland Schwa previously, and so the offensive style that you'll see from the Swiss has been inspired by Schwa, as we see a lovely another look at that layout D from Serena Schenk. Great play. Swiss, I think probably, coming into this, Benji, what were your thoughts as to how these two teams would match up?
It did seem that the Russians were, on paper, were very much the favourites going into this match, and so far they've definitely looked the more confident, the more assured, the more well-drilled side. But the Swiss they've put a couple of bits together. They've had some big plays, so they're certainly not short of fight.
They are not short of fight. That's quite correct. I think they. It'd be nice to see more of these big defensive plays. If they can manage to sneak them away from the Russians. Another look at that layout form that was called out Inga Sulimova. And so Russians will set themselves. We've seen a side stack look from them previously, but now they're sort of almost directly in front of the handler. The number 10, Sabina Silchonok. But Swiss choosing to poach off the secondary handler, try and stifle the downfield options for the Russians.
The Russians have been not unreluctant to take the swing, although this time a lovely break around is going to initiate the play.
Fakes the big backhand as she has an option deep. There we go. The number 13 in the end zone. Turns her back to read it better. Backward stepping, Kristina Mikhailova.
Much more confident there from the Russians. They clearly knew what they wanted to do after the timeout. We've seen them swing to this near sideline. That time, a fantastic break. Got the disc onto the break side, and it means that with a stack set in the middle as well, you've got a lot of space to work with and opened up enough room to put that deep shot out into space. And as you mentioned, a fantastic read. Turn around early so she could make sure she could get full set of eyes on that disc to Mikhailova.
And there we see the throw that went. And exactly what you just spoke about, Benji. Field might picking up some very loud Russian fans on our near sideline. As we said, a tight-knit community in the Russian ultimate scene. Many of these players playing together with their mixed open, mixed masters. I think, is that all of the divisions the Russians are currently appearing in?
I could certainly find out for you.
But lots of love between the compatriots, playing plenty of fun tournaments together.
Men's, women's, mixed, men's masters and master mixed.
Oh, so I forgot the men's masters. Apologies, chaps. But two Russian defenders swiping away. A foul's going to be called by the looks of it by Femke Wieler. Got a little bit of too much of Elena Vinogradova's arms, uncontested. And she'll reapply her visor.
Good use of hand signals there. As we mentioned, with not necessarily a first language in common, it can be a little bit difficult, so those hand signals make the job easier for everyone on the pitch and conveniently as well for us up here in the booth.
Just making sure everyone knows what's going on as Yaman puts a hospital pass, all the bodies in the world under it, and a Russian defensive bid.
A maelstrom of players getting up underneath that disc. We've seen there the bump that caused that foul call. Yasalova breaks around to begin the possession once more.
So the Russians once again off the races. Big disc going up. That one's going to be very challenging to reel in. Vinogradova has a look at it, but actually stops dead and says, not for me.
Hepa Aho was poaching off that other handler, trying to just clog a little bit of space in there, and maybe that forced a bit more pressure on the throw. Seeing there the earlier D on this point, and I just think maybe with that open, I'd always like to see players take the open pass. That swing wasn't necessarily the sexy pass, but they could have positioned it so they could have gained a few more yards with it as well, and maybe put yourself, especially with a handler being poached off, more space to put a big disc up without pressure. Yeah,
the Swiss really trying to just make things happen with the disc rather than going for the harder but more, you know, safe option of actually just using their bodies to get separation. Because if you hang it up, the Russians have got a height mismatch on a good portion of the Swiss squad, so it's not the way to play to defeat this team. But a nice hanger up for Vinogradova in the number 56, Gubanova. Patient swinging. Yasalova, good. Gubanova at the back, big backhand break. Finds the hands of Elena Vinogradova. And again, we see those big backhands, large pivots from the Russians, opening up that break side in the end zone for an easy score.
Yeah, the force of Femke Wieler, guilty of just being way too flat on that force and allowing that around break that we know is a devastating throw for the Russians.
So the Russians take half 7-1. We'll see if I believe the Swiss started from the right-hand side on offense, so we'll see them come out defense from the left side of your screen. Another look at that last bit of offense. Big backhand around for the score. And this is what we've seen them do so often, Benji. Work it patiently between the handlers, great discipline, and then just opening up that break side channel. Devastating scenes.
That throw and go strike cut from Yasalova is crucial, because although she doesn't get the disc, she does mean that the force comes and flattens up, maybe thinking about stopping that dangerous up-line throw, getting the thrower in the power position, seeing the field, and it means that that around break can go for the score in the end.
We've been talking all week long about the fact that it's so hard to generate movement and energy on the sand that just sucks all of the power from your kinetic chain, but Russia, no such problems. It seems a disc from Tezik into the end zone and makes quick work of the Swiss defense.
That was just, it was both beautiful and brutal from the Russians. Just quick movement. They barely had the disc for more than 1 or 2 seconds at a time, and it's just, that's not offense that's going to make a highlight reel necessarily, but it's so fun to watch.
So as we get a replay of that, we can, you and I, Benji, can see the Russian coach at the moment talking to a good cluster of players right next to one of our cameras, so might not be able to get a shot of it for you, but he's currently drawing lines in the sand. Looks like they're starting to now, with such a comfortable margin, 7-point lead in this game, they're starting to really try and finesse out their offense and defense, trying to prepare for the latter stages of this game, which will be, well, sorry, this tournament even, because they're certainly up there in the favourites, current world and European champions. Big changeover of their roster for this tournament.
It's a little surprising that we haven't talked about that thrilling universe point win at WCBU yet.
Well, there's still time in this match as the Swiss try and keep their dream alive. Johanna Hepa-Aho just has to watch that one sail over the head. Number 48, Sulimova, finds Silchonok. Has an option available for the swing, which she takes quite late. Just a straight up lateral passing between the handlers. Big disc coming. Looks right, looks left. But a bit of a misread from Anastasia Kochenova.
She got a little bit too far straight in front of the disc, and so she looked over one shoulder and looked at the other and couldn't quite locate it early enough.
And so the Swiss with another opportunity to put their second point on the board. Very close. Handler set, gonna need to have a reset deep. Releases the pressure valve, but no one underneath it. The Swiss was so close to each other then, just really clustering around the disc when the stall count got high. Not a thing you can do on beach.
It's tempting to want, especially on a high stall count, you want to get close to the thrower to give them an easy option, but all you're doing really is just drawing more defenders into that space, and it's so difficult to get that throw out on the high stall. We saw I had to go with the blade because it was the only way to not get through the traffic in the middle of the pitch.
And so Russians giving us an example of a nicely spread offense. Plenty of space underneath for the handler to pop it into. Easy reach up for Sulimova. Good working around the back, finds the open channel. Oh, a reaching grab, but topples to the floor, empty-handed. Does the 91 Elisa Tizik, I think that is.
Just guilty that time. It's just an overthrow. There is a space down that channel, but put it too far out in front, thinking about trying to toe the line as well as make the catch, and wasn't able to do so.
Oh, that wasn't Tizik, it was Kristina Mikhailova, but favouring the very luminous headband and long ponytail style of her teammate. Disc goes up. It seems Mikhailova is the only person looking for it. Oh, a cheeky sitting out into that pivot. I love that release from Anastasia Kochenova.
You're getting low and wide to really make sure she can break the force down that far sideline. Again, Russians not necessarily been clean all the time, but they are doing a very good job of getting the disc back. And the two times they have started on offense, they converted it without turning it over.
Yeah, needs the big pivot to get around the force. I think that is trying to grab there was the visor, Femco Vila, I think. But great release point, nice and wide. Bit of a dirty play in terms of the smoothness of that offense. Certainly no comment about the spirit of it. They're grinding hard, are the Russians, but I think they'll be having some words with their coach after that point. Not the prettiest ultimate we've seen them play here on this arena field. And certainly not the kind of things that'll be getting them a piece of gold around their neck. Swiss needing to, oh, a little bit of pressure from Shekina. Manages to throw off the concentration of Dinah. Again, oh, a nice little pop into the sand to keep the disc alive. Good use of the backhands once more. Tumbling force. Furious fakes, but good work of red zone D from the Swiss. And there's a little error, giving an opportunity for the ladies in red. Good up line, but chooses the riskier option to push her. That's going to be too far for her to reel in.
Yeah, a bit of a mixed bag so far at this point from Mikhailova. She had that drop, just bounced off her hands, but she did a very good job, an excellent job, as she has done all game really, with the pull. Started the Swiss deep in their end zone, and that caused the pressure that led to that early turnover in the short field, although the Russians couldn't capitalize on it.
And she will get the disc back in play. Want to have your best thrower on that first pass. Moving the disc from static, the hardest of all, but Sheikina makes an absolute meal of just an easy swing pass to her teammate.
I don't think Salnikova was looking for the disc. Stopped her cut.
And there the Swiss punch it in, making it 9-2. Look at them all with their hands on their knees. Not as enthusiastic as the celebration from their first score, as the Russians just absolutely pummel them from both sides, it seems, in this match. But great attack there. We see fabulous defense from the 98 shirt, Sheikina. An error here, I believe. Oh no, sorry, that's the recovery.
One thing we hadn't really seen with the Swiss was them with a short field red zone offense. They did a very efficient job here, just dumping it off and burning to that open side, getting enough separation for the throw to sit out in front for the score.
A fabulous give-go, if ever there was. The scorer, number 32, Fiona Pacifico, the material engineer out of Zurich, which she regrettably says is too far away from the mountains for her liking. Although she started playing Ultimate because it was raining too much in the mountains, so go figure.
Bit of a catch-22, that one.
So Russia, lots and lots of passes between their handlers, causing an error, just a bit of a casual lack of clap catch. And there the Swiss take advantage. Perhaps the comeback train, they've stamped their tickets too late, Benji, but great to see the Swiss now putting together some fabulous offense.
That's the first time we've seen the Russian O-line turn the disc over, and the Swiss D-line punched it in immediately, just throw a little bit behind them, could only span of the clap catch, and did a very good job of striking quickly, maybe taking advantage of downed Russian heads.
Well, 10 minutes remaining, or just under, for regulation time here in this women's pool play match. Benji, for fans of the division more generally, we're not going to give any spoilers, but what's your feel on this GB Latvia game happening behind us?
It's going pretty well if you're a Latvia fan, I'd suggest. If you're interested in knowing exactly what's going on in that game and all across the tournament, you can find it all on the live page, which is live.ebuc2019.org. The women's format is a pool of 7. Round robin, the top 4 go through to the semi-finals, and it looks like being the Russians, Denmark, Spain and Latvia, although not necessarily completely set in stone yet.
And Russia will be hoping to retain their title as the second hand comes in to make sure for Olga Romanova. Nice tumble from Vinogradova. Oh, and a casual single-hand catch, and then an immediate launch, but is the footwork good enough to put another point on the board for Russia?
The difficult thing in these situations is knowing exactly when the catch was made compared to when the foot went down.
Oh, and a slow-mo replay, yes! Just about squeezes it in. The catch made before that outside foot goes down.
A couple of the Russian players crowded around our low camera to get a look at it on the replay screen. It was a nice bit of footwork in the end. Came very close, but all credit to the Smiths, they didn't even have a look at the replay. They were happy to take the other people's point of view, who maybe were closer to the play, and say, yep, we're happy with that, it's a score.
And so another point on the board for the Russians. Score now 10-3 in this women's pool game. Good spread of stats from the Russians, actually. There's no real standouts, apart from perhaps some could argue Yulia Akramova, who has both 2 scores and 2 assists to her name.
Yeah, and actually the stats in general across the tournament bear it out. Everyone's got at least a score or an assist this tournament.
Always nice to see. No matter what position the Russians play, they can be dangerous. And that's a wonderful shot from the Swiss, reeled in by Johanna Heber-Apo. Lovely play indeed, straight out of the bat, perfect conversion.
That's a beautiful throw, a lovely shape to it. Right down Broadway, the middle of the field, beautiful shot. And John Haparajo, you can't really go deep and receive a better throw than that.
No, we'll have to double check the replay to see who was dishing that one for her. Oh, great release point, nice and low. And that's an inside flick, Benji. Inside flick huck's one of the more challenging.
I think it's Femke Wheeler doing the honours here, but it's a beautiful throw. Just the force a little bit far off. You see her really lean, using those long arms and long legs to get around the mark, and beautiful. Just an absolute peach of a throw.
Oh, coming out of the hands of the 41-year-old veteran. Wheeler in absolutely fantastic shape out here on the field. Been playing for 20 years, Benji.
It's always I love seeing players who are old enough to play in the master divisions, but still good enough to apply their trade in the lower, in the younger divisions. I was going to say the younger divisions doing the same.
Exactly. So we see Tizik throw an inside backhand. Russian handlers just happy to let the downfield work it between them. Nice little piece of offense. I think everyone touched the disc in that point for Russia.
Just so easy, just like a little pinball machine, just binging and bonging it down the field.
So you actually mentioned earlier, Benji, these two teams met each other in terms of the nations back in 2013 on the beaches in Calafate. Very different squads this time. We've already mentioned the fact that the Russian side have lost some of their mega superstars who are currently in the mixed division, just to try and get a bit of a different flavour of challenge here on the sand in Portimao. But there's been a big turnover in the Swiss roster, just one returning player from their last outing in Royan. So a lot of youth. I think probably that's the thing that's hurting them the most, is just the perhaps not having anywhere near the depth of talent that the Russians have at the moment. But of course they'll look to hone that and see them in future years back in the same positions that they were before. Yeah, 6th place finish for the Swiss in Royan compared to the Russians, who won that thrilling gold medal match against the USA. Oh, and in what style as well. If this is giving you a good taste of beach ultimate, we'd highly recommend checking out that women's final from Royan. It was the talk of the tournament. The Russians taking down the US, who'd already collected so many gold medals. And if you watch that game, you'll know what I mean when you say that shows why you have to catch your D's. Yes, it does. We've seen it all week long. Players still not learning, but Pacifico on the disc. Needs a round option, but she's going to have to launch it. Wheeler looks at it, sailing over her head, unable to get there. Good bailout though, but this time we see the Swiss, they're starting to play with more confidence, Benji. At least at that point they did actually have a deep shot. And I like the way that she pivoted inward as well. Got on the line, the temptation is to look straight down the field, but half of your field of vision in that way is off the pitch, and that's not necessarily a useful space. So if you can turn your hips and look inwards, you're seeing where all the play is going on and where all the players are. I think if she could have pivoted around, there was potentially an around backhand there, but wasn't confident enough to release it. Perhaps seen a little too late, as we see the Russians sort of not quite as slick as they have been in this game, but just happy to just play a bit of keepy disky. Yaslavo. Up she goes, and there's a big backhand, but there's going to be just enough defense on it. That's a great run through from Fiona Pacifico, just getting in the line of vision of the intended target, causing a bit of mischief and mayhem. The problem with that cut from Dostova, it goes a little bit early and she's already in the space, so she has to wait for the disc to arrive, especially on sand, where you can't really turn as easily, and it allows Pacifico to take that narrower channel, get a clearer path to the disc, and just tip it out of that far sideline. And respect shown from the 22, Luizia Drozdova, who I think she probably expected Pacifico to catch that, just gets a tip on it. Not really ready to make that body flop bid, but an early turnover as Wheeler is overthrown. Russians very short field opportunity to take this game to 12-4 potentially. And that'll be their first match point if they do after this. Good movement upfield, but gonna need a reset. Large swing near side now. Into the breadbasket, good catch by Sulimova. And there we go, a little pop up into the hands of Anastasia Kochenova. Great rapid movement there.
And you're seeing again the benefit of that handler cut up the line, because if you don't stop that, you don't adjust on the force it goes, and you've got the player with the disc in their hands already seeing the field, ready to release it quickly. And if you don't, and if you do, obviously you straighten up to stop that throw going, then you relieve the around break. And it's why so many teams use this as a staple of their offense.
So there, as you mentioned, that up the line, bit of a risky disc, almost punches Inga Sulimova directly in her right shoulder. Thankfully, that's her dominant shoulder, being a righty.
Here it is again from the low angle, just the force, desperate to stop that around.
But that's been really crucial, stopping those around. So you just have to hand it to the Swiss, taking away those breaks on the force, but unable to quite keep up with the Russians, matching speed for speed up the line.
You see a lot of teams now switch defenders on that handler cut. They'll have the player who was on the mark drop off up the line, and the player who was then beaten to that space come onto the mark to try and stop those throws going.
More of a grass play though, as we've all mentioned throughout the week, so difficult to launch. And that's a lovely bid from Smolodina. What a dime of a catch. Again, that's a really close handler movement. Livia Staub getting so close to Dinah, unable to come up with it. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is game for Russia. They take this one. Time cap going on just before that point, but we've played to the full 13. And Russian looking very, very good right now, going in towards the latter stages of this women's division. Great fight from the Swiss, but they just didn't seem to have it in the end, Benji. Yeah,
one pass ultimate there. It's just, and it's so, especially on the sand, where often if players are dropping it, after they've made a bid, so they're on the sand, it can take a bit of time to get up. So if you're on your feet, you can run to the disc, pick it up, and get it moving quickly before the defenders have a chance. And Akramova's way too quick across the sand to stop. And she, so we've talked about the spread depth across the Russian team, but Akramova with 3 goals and 2 assists always seems to be in the right place at the right time for them.
Yeah, having an absolutely fantastic game. So looking at the shape of this one, Benji, the Russians just came out so strong at the beginning. The Swiss only managing to put 1 in on in the first half. Bit of a better performance towards the later stages of the game, getting their own break back at 9-3. But it just never looked really that scary for the Russians.
No, the only time their O-line turned over the disc, the Swiss were able to punch in a break, so credit to them for that. But generally their O-line was far too clinical on the rare occasions they did get out on the field. And while their D-line gave it up a bit more than they would have liked, they were so strong, really gummed downfield movement, forced a lot of bailout throws, and they'll want to tighten up maybe that D-line offense, but they'll be happy with the consistency at which they were able to force turnovers.
So Russia pick up another win as they approach those semis and the final. We'll bring you more action coming up next. Who do we have?
We're going into the mixed masters division, which is going to be something a little bit different, a slight change of pace, perhaps we'll describe it. And
hopefully it should be a close one. The teams on the field will be Spain and France, and we have a very exciting treat for you on this live stream. We have a new voice you might not have heard before. Vanina Ettori will be joining me for that one to give us the inside track from the French side of things. So stay with us. That 10:50, you have but 20 minutes to go make yourself a refreshment. Then we'll be back later today. We've got some spicy action from the men's quarter-final at 12. 2 sees us bring you the Great Grandmaster men's division, a mixed quarter-final at 3:30, and then 2 men's semi-finals to finish off the day. Interesting, Benji, to see the men get a day off on Friday just to enjoy the action here in the Algarve.
And what action we've had. So I can't think of anything else I'd rather be doing. But if you're not here, as we mentioned, you can watch all the action at home live on Facebook or on the WFDF YouTube channels. And as well as that, you can follow all the goings on from the tournament live.ebuc2019.org.
And just to drop it in as well, the finals day will also be picked up by the World Games and Olympic channels. So many options for you to enjoy the coverage here, as if you were also enjoying the scenes yourself. For me, Hannah Pendlebury, and for Benji Rees and our statsman, Brian, we'll see you again very shortly.
TV.